Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter. Of course, you can subscribe to the channel. Let's talk boxing. Let's talk about 3 fights from last night. We'll talk about Dillian Whyte and his victory over Jermaine Franklin, and we'll talk about the public narrative that's gone on about that and how we break that down. We'll also talk about Zach Parker's defeat at the hands of John Ryder and John Ryder moving forward to fight Canelo Alvarez. And we'll also, of course, discuss Fabio Wardley's stoppage victory over Nathan Gorman. We'll start off discussing Dillian Whyte. And I actually feel the general consensus around this is a little bit inaccurate. It's a little bit unfair. It's a bit harsh, basically. I think a lot of it might have to do with pre-fight expectations. You know, a lot of people haven't really watched Franklin fight before, and they might have thought, listen, the last time we got one of these supposed American undefeated heavyweights who could do something was when he fought Daniel Dubois and on a Don King card, and we saw what happened there. And I think a lot of people were sort of expecting a similar sort of outcome here. But Franklin's got some good attributes about him. He's got some very nice fast hands for a heavyweight. He's calm under pressure, very composed, picks his shots. He's a good counter puncher. He's got a really nice lead hand when he's throwing hooks. He throws that double left hook really well. His technique for delivering that, the way he shakes his body to shoot off one after the other, is a really nice shot for him. His right hand when it's straight is decent too. His uppercut needs a little bit of work. There are some technical elements there that he needs to work on, but generally speaking, he's quite good in that regard. He's durable. He takes a little bit off of shots. He's a good little fighter. Not top class, not elite, but he's a good level fighter. Dillian Whyte, on the other hand, a lot of people maybe were expecting him to roll back the years. A lot of people that felt that Tyson Fury just made him look terrible and that he's not declining. A lot of those people will feel as though he's going to roll back the years tonight and he's going to look spectacular. In reality, and this is not taking away anything from Fury, maybe Fury's the one that put in the damage that took something off of Dillian Whyte, right? I'm not sitting here trying to undermine Fury in any way. But to me, it's looked quite evident for a while now, from the Povetkin fights even, that Dillian isn't quite what he was. He's declining. This is not the Dillian Whyte that fought Joseph Parker, for instance. He's just not as sharp. His activity level's nowhere near what it was. He's not as explosive. So and his punch resistance, of course, is not what it used to be. So what's happened now is that they've tried to alter his style a little bit, and there were a few things there that I really liked despite the criticism. He's been working with Buddy McGirt for just 6 weeks now, and what he's chosen to do is be more protective of that chin, and so he's brought a cross arm guard into the realm of his capabilities. And one of the reasons he's done that is to cut off the potential of an uppercut coming from low, but he's also catching shots with that other hand. He's turning with shots. He's watching what's coming. He's remaining calm and trying to intercept them in that way. And a lot of the work of Franklin was coming off of the gloves, the wrist, the forearms, the elbows, the biceps, the shoulders. And the commentary team were saying really good work there for Franklin. Well, actually, no, a lot of it is being blocked. They're not scoring shots. And I think this is one of the reasons a lot of people feel that Franklin won the fight, because they're not really looking at where the shots are landing and whether they're scoring shots. I personally had Dillian Whyte winning the fight 7-5. I can see 8-4. I don't have a problem with it. I can also see a draw. Okay, I'm not saying you're terribly wrong if you got a draw. I can't see Franklin winning the fight. I can't give him 7 rounds. But a draw to 8-4, you're only talking about 2 rounds, and there were a few rounds in there that were close rounds. So you can see why somebody would give something one way and something another way. I thought the right man got the job done. But one of the problems that he had was activity. He wasn't able to go through the gears. He seemed to be gassing at points. And at other points, when he was in the middle of exchanging with you, when he'd get caught with a little something back, he would then go to covering up. And that to me suggests that he is genuinely concerned about his punch resistance. Dillian always had a lot of dog in him, and I really rate the fact that he's able to adjust and try and become more of a thinking fighter. That shows, a level of intellect when it comes to the fight game, a level of ring IQ. But nonetheless, what has made Dillian Whyte so good is that dog in him, the ability to go through the gears and really bite down on that gum shield. And when he starts to punch with opponents, really good catch and counter, he can then go to war. He sort of lost a little bit of that last night. And it's not the fact that he was a thinking fighter in there, because they were countering each other well in the first couple of rounds. So it's not that. It's not the fact that he realised, okay, I'm getting countered here, I've got to be a little bit more careful. It's more the fact that when there were moments where he should have gone through the gears, it felt to me as though he couldn't. As though he was breathing heavily when maybe that wasn't conducive to the type of work he had been doing. It's almost as though, and I'm not suggesting this is the case because he only had 6-week camp with Buddy McGirt, sure, but Buddy's a very experienced guy. He was a very good fighter, and he knows what he's doing. He's worked with some top fighters. But it was almost as though he hadn't done things like explosive work, like sprint training, where all of a sudden if he had to explode and sustain a level of that work rate, he couldn't do that. They were short little bursts, and we're talking really short, and then he'd go back into a shield. And so he was almost getting outworked at points, even though I didn't think the work was really getting through consistently when a lot of people felt it was, because it was coming off of those arms. But you've then got to make the guy pay. There's no point in just catching, you've got to make him pay. So there are areas there that concern me about Dillian Whyte, the physical elements. You know, his balance has never been great. If he's not able to really explode and force a guy into a bit of a tear-up, what is the ceiling for Dillian Whyte here? You know, the punch resistance we know is not what it used to be, and they're talking now about putting him in a ring with Anthony Joshua. I don't think that will end well for Dillian, but I do like the fact that he's adding wrinkles to his game. I just think that that's too high a step for him at this stage. Let me know what you think, ladies and gents, of Dillian Whyte's performance. Buddy McGirt had been saying to him in the corner during the fight, I like your defense, but you've got to get behind that double jab and push him back. So even when you're listening to what Buddy McGirt was saying and you're reading between the lines, he was happy with Dillian's defense, but he wanted more offensively speaking. Is he capable of that though? Let me know what you think. Moving on from that, let's talk about John Ryder and Zach Parker. We didn't get to see the full fight, unfortunately. It was stopped after 4 rounds because ultimately we saw that Zach Parker had broken his hand, and it was true. He took his hand out of his glove, he showed it to the camera, and his hand certainly looked contorted. It didn't look right, it was broken. I had it 2-2. Most people had it 3-1 to John Ryder. I actually had it 2 rounds apiece. I had the first couple going to Zach Parker. The third round, I thought that the tide had changed, and I actually messaged a friend of mine to say Ryder's got this now. Like, I felt as though he'd been able to start closing the range now, and he was going to start to make Parker very, very uncomfortable. I felt Ryder pre-fight would win the fight. By the 4th round, like I said, Parker had broken his hand. But what was evident to me in the first couple of rounds is that Ryder was almost in a too much of a bladed stance. A bladed stance, in other words, he wasn't square on. He was far too off the shoulder. And when he would be stepping around that shoulder, Zach Parker, by the time he would turn with him, he couldn't adjust with him in time. And I felt that Parker at range was doing enough good work there. When Ryder began to run red lights, as the wire likes to say, and jump in, sometimes a little bit recklessly, he would still find success in those 3rd and 4th rounds. And that's when it started to become apparent that Parker's time here is numbered, in my opinion. He was struggling. And I know a lot of people have questioned his heart. Listen, man, if you break your hand as early as that, and at best it's 2 rounds apiece, you can't go on to fight 12 rounds. If it's you've just finished the 10th round and you're 7-3 up and you've got something to defend, you might think, you know what, as long as I don't get knocked out here, I can win this fight. I can defend it. I'm going to get behind the jab. I'm going to move, show my heart, show my warrior spirit. Might have to take a bit of a beating. But these are prize fighters. And from the 4th round, when your hand is broken like that and you're not ahead in the fight, what is it you expect these guys to do? Do you want him to continue to throw his hands? He's going to end up crushing the bones in his hand, and he'll never be the same again. Paulie Malignaggi had 3 knockouts off of his first 4 fights. Then he broke his hand twice, and he had a pin put in his hand. And in fact, he broke it once, had a pin put in his hand, and broke it again. And after that, he never had a right hand. Floyd Mayweather. Look at Floyd. He was a bit of a puncher as Pretty Boy, and although he went through the weight categories, which plays a role too, he had hand troubles in the latter half of his career. And when you look at the last 10 years of his career, after the Ricky Hatton knockout, he only had 2 more knockouts. One of them was Conor McGregor, a guy who wasn't a boxer and came out a million miles an hour in the first couple of rounds, so you knew he didn't know how to pace himself. And Floyd was able to use foot pressure and body shots and wear him down. That's not really a knockout of an experienced boxer, let's be honest here. And the other only knockout he had was Victor Ortiz, who wasn't looking because the ref had just said break after Ortiz nutted him, and then Floyd knocked him out. So you could see that Floyd wasn't a puncher either after he had the hand troubles. It can really affect the trajectory of your career. And if you really destroy your hand, it can end your career. So I don't understand the stick Zach Parker's getting here. He's going to live to fight another day. That's just the reality, guys. That's just the reality of prize fighting. Now, in terms of John Ryder, one of the things I really liked is the short power that he's got. He throws these little left hooks where there's barely anything on it, and he hides behind that shoulder. And I really like the fact that Canelo Alvarez hasn't fought anybody in years who's been able to really get inside on him, to get on his chest. Look at some of the fighters that he's fought in recent years, and you'll see what I'm talking about. They're either boxer punchers or guys that want to maintain range, and Canelo's on the hunt. How many guys have gotten in there and they've thought, right, Not just at mid-range, even the first Golovkin fight, who walked him down. I'm talking about inside. Chest to chest, shoulder to shoulder, tying up, throwing little short shots. We haven't seen that. And because Canelo does have some stamina issues sometimes, it will be interesting to see how he'll cope with that if he's getting hit to the body. The last guy who was kind of up close like that was Liam Smith. And Liam gave him some problems. And Liam Smith's not as physically strong as John Ryder. And his shots are more of a whipping. They're whipping hooks where they come around and stuff. John Ryder's short. He's got short power. There isn't much of a load on his shots. It is an interesting fight. That's not to say he's going to beat Canelo, but you want to see these great fighters in with different styles. And this is one that I'm actually intrigued by. I'm looking forward to the fight. Let me know what you think about that. Now, with regards to Gorman and Fabio Wardley, I expected Gorman to win this fight. I thought that he's too skilled for Fabio Wardley. I felt that Wardley, although he's a puncher, I don't think he's Daniel Dubois. I don't think he's at that level. And so a lot of people were looking towards that and saying, well, look at what Dubois did to Nathan Gorman. And I'm sitting there thinking, listen, at the end of the day, just because Dubois did it doesn't mean that this guy's going to do it. Even though he can pop, he can turn it around at any given moment. But ultimately, he bites too much on feints, I feel. His defense is predominantly reflex-based, but he can lose his positioning when he's moving in certain areas. So although he can avoid the first shot, with the second shot, if you're going to throw a combination, you can find Fabio Wardley. And so I expected Gorman to be able to start lighting him up quite early, to be honest with you. And privately, I didn't do a video. Privately, I thought Gorman might get him out there quite early in the first 3 or 4 rounds. And within the first, round and a half, I was thinking, this is in the bag. He's battering Wardley here. He's lighting him up. Then all of a sudden, he catches him with a right hand. And that changes the world. And when you've got the power that he's got, you can do that. However, it's not just a question of changing the world. I have to ask questions about Gorman himself. Because if they had the same level of grit, heart and determination, I think Gorman still wins that fight. In other words, as Hatman had said on his channel before, there are degrees of toughness. I'm not here to question Gorman's toughness as though he's a coward. The guy's a pro fighter. He's fighting for a British title. You know, he's a tough man. There's no doubt about it. But there are degrees of it. And I just think that Wardley was willing to go to areas that Gorman wasn't last night. He got battered early in that fight. He got his nose broken and he bit down on that gumshoe and he said, I'm going to keep letting my hands go. Now, Gorman did catch him when he was in trouble with a few counter left hooks. When Wardley was in the pocket, head up in the air, he's catching him. So he was still doing some offensive work. But why was he backing up onto the ropes and just having that high guard? That's what Wardley wanted you to have. The minute he's hurt, you just go for a walk. Keep moving. Keep your feet moving. Now, a lot of people were critical of Gorman pre-fight, saying, listen, he's coming at 19 stone. So maybe that had something to do with his inability to move when he had to move, basically, if he wasn't in shape. But to me, he didn't look like he was out of shape. Maybe he's just a heavier guy than he appears to be. Maybe he's just got some, you know, a body shape that's never going to be body beautiful, so to speak. But actually, he was in decent shape, even though he's come in lighter in the past. Maybe he wanted that extra bulk to be able to absorb more punishment. We know Tyson Fury feels as though he's physically stronger when he's a bigger, heavier man. And we know that Gorman is his cousin. We know that John Fury is very big on the idea of size and weight as well. Different strokes for different folks. Maybe it works for Tyson. It doesn't work for Gorman. Maybe Gorman feels it works for him too in sparring. Who knows? The fact of the matter is, I felt that he had to be getting out of the way of certain shots. And he didn't. He was too much of a sitting duck when he'd been hurt. He had to work on a clinch game in the build-up to this fight to be able to stop Wardley from throwing punches. If he had gotten out of that crisis, the fact that Wardley had put in so much of an effort to get him out of there, had he not, we saw that Gorman was capable of hurting him. So, I don't know, man. If I was in Gorman's corner, I'd be looking back at this and I'd be upset with myself. If I'm Fabio Wardley's corner, though, I'm incredibly proud of this guy because he's going from strength to strength. He's continuing to improve. And you have to understand, this was a white-collar fighter. That is a guy who was, it's not even an amateur. It's like semi-pro, I think they call it as well. It's basically just normal dudes deciding that they want to get into shape and have fights with each other, people with other day jobs. And often, these are unlicensed bouts. So he's come from there and he's won a British title. A lot of people put Jake Paul on a pedestal. A lot of people undermine him too, but a lot of people put him on a pedestal and they say, look how much he's improved. Well done to him. Well, Fabio Wardley's the same type of character. The difference is he's not a social media presence, but he started late in his life, boxing, and he took it seriously without the amateur pedigree. I think he's had 19 fights in total, they were saying last night, including in the sort of white collar scene, or there was something like that. That's pretty incredible. You have to give this guy a lot of credit. There's clearly a lot of natural talent there. But there is a ceiling at the moment. Can he break through that barrier and through that ceiling? Well, listen, he's continued to improve. The first time he fought, if you'd seen him and he said, I'm going to win a British title, you might have said, no way. So who knows where he can go. Good luck to Fabio. He's got a lot of power, a lot of grit, a lot of determination. But there are still some technical areas there that he needs to work on. He's with a very good tactical team in Ben Davison and Lee Wiley now. So it'll be interesting to see how the developments occur there from a defensive perspective. Let me know what you think about all the fights we've spoken about. Thanks for watching, ladies and gents. Please don't forget to hit his stiff jab on the like button, a right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. Thanks for watching. Take care. God bless.